Hello and welcome to solving 1 and 2 step equations. So in order to solve an equation, it means solve an equation. It means to find the value of the variable that makes the equation true. All right? And both sides must have the same solution. All right. So let's get started. Oh, these are the properties that we use in order to solve equations. And so I'll use a couple of them just to show you how it's done. Alrighty, so we're going to solve each equation. So 18 plus z equals 40. So I'm going to use the subtraction property and I'm going to subtract the 18 because our whole point is to get the z by itself. All right, actually let me zoom in a little bit better. There we go. So 18 minus 18 will give us 0. So we'll just be left with z on the right side or on the left side, and then 40 minus 18 is going to give us 22. So z equals 22. Alrighty. Now, let's look at b. Negative 4a equals 48. So this is negative 4 times a. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So we're going to use the division property of equality to divide negative 4 to both sides. And it looks like my markers are dying. But negative 4 divided by negative 4 is going to give us 1. So we're going to be left with a equals, and then 48 divided by negative 4 is going to give us negative 12. And once we solve for our variable, we have a letter on one side and a number on the other, then we're done. Okay? So now let's look at c. X minus 15 equals negative 6. Again, we want to get the letter by itself. So we are going to use the addition property, and we're going to add 15 to both sides. So we have x equals negative 6 plus 15 is going to leave us with 9. And remember, the negative 15 plus 15 cancels out. Alrighty. Let's take a look at the next one. Everybody struggles with the fraction one, so it's okay. Alright, but we have h divided by 3 equals negative 12. So we want to get this 3 away from the h. So in order to do that, we're going to have to do the opposite of division, which is going to be multiply. So we're going to use the multiplication property. So we're going to multiply both sides by 3. Because 3 divided by 3 is going to give us 1. So we're going to be left with h equals negative 12 times 3 will give us negative 36. For e, 12 times t equals negative 132. So because we are multiplying, we're going to have to do the opposite, which is dividing. So we're going to divide by 12 to get the t by itself. So we're going to be left with t equals negative 11. Alright, and if you notice, each time we're doing this, we only have one step to do. We only divide once or multiply once, so on and so forth. So that makes it a little bit easier. Okay. For f, we want to get the k by itself, so we're going to add 8 to both sides, which is the addition property, because we're adding. And so 5 plus 8 will give us 13, equals negative k. Now, this is important because we cannot have a negative letter. So instead, what we're going to do is divide both sides by -1. And the purpose of this is just to change the signs of everything. So whenever there's a bell, whenever you have a negative letter, we are just going to change the signs of everything. So this positive 13 becomes a negative 13, and the negative k becomes a positive k, which is the same as dividing by -1. All right. Now, let's look at G. All right. Everybody hates fractions, but that's okay. So, we have 3/4 equals W plus 2/5. So we are going to start with the subtraction property because the 2/5 is added to the W, which will cancel those out. And so we'll be left with 3/4 minus 2/5 equals W. Oops, sorry, my hand was in the way. Alrighty. Now, you can either do this the really easy way of putting it into your calculator, or we can do it the mathematical way, which you might have to, depending on if this is a calculator portion or non-calculator portion. Alright, so let's give it a try. We cannot subtract these because we do not have a common denominator. So we have to make a common denominator. So I know that 4 and 5 multiplied together give us 20. So I want to make my denominator 20. Therefore, I'm going to multiply 3/4 by 5/5 to get the bottom to be 20. So that's going to give me 15/20 minus 2/5 equals W. That still doesn't help because now I need to do this side. Because 5 times 4 will give me 20. So, and I did not give myself enough room for this, 15/20 minus, and remember, we multiply across when we multiply fractions, 8/20. So now we have 15/20 minus 8/20. And 15 minus 8 will give us 7/20. That one was a lot more steps. Okay. Now for H. H is a lot easier because all we have to do is use the division property to get the 9 away from the x. 9 divided by 9 will give us 1, and then we'll be left with x. So x equals 1. And now we're on to I. Negative 2/5 equals negative z divided by 35. So for this one, we will want to multiply by negative 35. Why do I want to multiply by negative 35? Why not just 35? That's right, because I need to make this positive, and multiplying a negative times negative makes it positive. And so, when we multiply both sides by negative 35, these cancel, and I'm left with a positive z on the right side. And then negative 35 times negative 2 will give me a positive 70/5. And then we just need to simplify. 70 divided by 5 will give me 14. Alrighty, if you need any extra help with any of these, please raise your hand now. If you don't need help, we're going to move on. And remember, you can pause this video at any time and rewatch. So for example 2, we need to write an equation for each sentence and then solve the equation. Alrighty, so this is like writing expressions, which we were working on earlier this week, or last week. So 5/11ths, so 5/11ths is a fraction, times a number is 55. Well, we know times is multiply, and our number is x. So 5/11ths multiply x. So 5/11ths multiply x is means equals 55. Alrighty. So now, because we have a fraction times our letter, we need to multiply by the reciprocal. Reciprocal just means the opposite. So we gotta flip it. So I'm going to flip this fraction to be 11/5. We're going to multiply it on both sides of our equation. 11/5 will cancel out the 5/11 because this will just become 55/55. Well, 55/55 just equals 1x. Alright, and so then it's going to be equal to 55 times 11, which is going to give us a big number of 605 divided by 5. But we can just put that in our calculator, so that 605 divided by 5 will give us 121. And that's our answer. Alrighty. Let's try the next one. In 2004, approximately 5 million cars and trucks were classified as flex fuel, which means they could run on gasoline or ethanol. In 2009, the number is increased to about 8 million. How many more cars and trucks were flex fuel in 2009? Alrighty, so then the important information is 5 million, and the number is increased to about 8 million. Alrighty, so we start out with 5 million, and it said the number is increased. Increased means add. Just going to put the plus sign. And we know the number is x. And it's increased to about 8 million. That one's pretty simple, right? Now we're just going to subtract 5 from both sides. So x equals 3 million. So there were 3 million more flex fuel cars in 2009 than 2004. Let's take a look at the next one. An electronics store sells a certain digital camera for $126. This is 2/3 of the price that a photography store charges. So what is the cost of the camera at the photography store? Now this one is a little bit more tricky. Alright, so electronics store sells a camera for $126. So obviously we're going to need that. But this is 2/3, this is, so we're going to have equals 126. 2/3, so we know we're going to need that. The price that a photography store charges. So a photography store is different from the electronics store. But we don't know what the photography store charges. And so that's just going to be x. Alright? So that's where that equation comes from. But unfortunately, we're not done because we still have to solve it. And since we have a fraction times our x, we need to multiply by the reciprocal. So I need to multiply both sides by 3/2. So that we get 6/6, which is just going to be x. equals, and then I'm just going to go ahead and do this in my calculator. Let me see if I can get both of these side by side. There we go. Alrighty. So I have 126, and then times, press the n divided by d button, 3 over 2. And that's going to give me 189. Alrighty. So now, for example 3, the a through h, these are two-step equations. These are going to be a little bit harder. So I'm going to stop the video and make a second one. When you're ready, start the second video and we will learn how to solve two-step equations.